Namaskar. Welcome to P Guru's Prime Time. I'm your host, Sri Iyer. And today I have with me a very special guest, Elmer Yuen, whom you've heard before. And Elmer has been an engineer who has worked for many years in China. He was especially responsible for looking at minerals and trying to source minerals for various Chinese companies. And today he is going to be our guest as we talk about China's interests in Afghanistan. If you have been reading, many countries, their embassies are completely relocating out of Kabul now. But China has comfortably said, we are not vacating Kabul. We are happy. We are going to have a functioning embassy, which means that they have some sort of an understanding with the incoming Taliban regime, which has not been given any official status yet. In fact, that recognition part game is going to happen. It will take some time before it plays out. So this tells us that there is some sort of a tacit understanding that China has reached with the incoming Taliban administration. And to understand a little bit more, and Elmer has visited Kabul several times as part of his job to do some of these things. So he will give us some rare insights as being part of a Chinese delegation as to what he saw. And by the way, we are taking questions for today's hangout. So without further ado, let me introduce and greet and welcome Elmer Yuen to the show. Elmer, welcome to P Guru's channel. How are you? Namaskar.
Thank you very much. This is our Chinese way of greeting.
Wonderful. It is very close to our
It is. It is.
Namaskar. So, which is,
We hold our own hands.
Oh, wonderful. So, Elmer, you must have watched with interest all the happenings that are going around and the speed with which Taliban has captured Kabul. It's taken everyone by surprise. How is it that these guys who are a ragtag set of warriors, which you're loosely saying warriors, how come they're able to overrun this country so easily? So there are talks about match fixing going on, and there's a set match and so on and so forth. But I'm not going to talk about all that. I'm going to ask you, sir, how do you see China's interest? When did China started courting Afghanistan, and how do you see this thing? Because we are going to draw on your experiences. So take it away wherever you want to start. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. China is the godfather behind the Taliban taking over Afghanistan. Remember, probably about 10 days ago, there was a meeting between China and the Deputy Secretary of State from the United States. That lady, I think her name is Schumer or something. I'm not exactly sure. And then, after, of course, the meeting was very tough. Both are warning each other and drawing red lines. So at the end of that meeting, China wants to show the United States who is the boss, right? China lectured the United States in Alaska. You remember that?
Yes, yes.
Yang Jiechi was lecturing Lincoln, and this time Wang Yi, the foreign minister, was lecturing Schumer. And right after that, one day after that, they invited the second guy in Taliban to sit in the exact chair where they put Schumer. And the picture was exactly the same background, same room, all right? And put him in the exact chair where Schumer used to sit, right? So it's at the point it's very obvious that they want the world to see that something is there. They have full support of the Taliban. Full support meaning, as you know, the Taliban get all their arms from Pakistan, from their buddies in Pakistan. It's very close, and China, of course, is all behind Pakistan. I'm sure your Indian audience knows better. So China will pick up the phone, give them all the arms, and then give them a date, all right, to give them a date to take over Afghanistan. So China sets the deadline. So they're all rushing. Of course, there were bonuses to be paid to the Taliban leaders, etc. If you do it before such a day, we're going to reward you, reward you with other weapons or money. This is something the Chinese are very good at. In the last year or so, you can see that the Chinese had taken over Hong Kong, right? And then Myanmar, right? Myanmar, the whole thing with the Myanmar was orchestrated and directed from Beijing, no question about it, all right? And then they have to follow. And now Afghanistan. If you want to look at things economically, politically first, all this is one belt, one road, all right? All this is part of the One Belt, One Road initiative.
They also call it BRI, right? OBOR
Belt and Road Initiative.
Right.
But it's in Chinese, it's a little bit different, but that doesn't matter. It's their expansion. It's their expansion. That is the whole idea, including South China Sea, including Taiwan, and etc. This is part of that. And Afghanistan is an important hub. I'm sure all the Indian audience knows better, because when Alexander the Great came all the way, right, to Afghanistan, you guys beat them, right? I'm not sure who is beating who, but are the Indian soldiers or the Afghanistan? They all claim victory, but one way or the other.
Elmer, here is the deal. When history gets written, it's always written by the person who's writing it. So if the Greeks wrote it, they wrote that Alexander won. But the Indian history says otherwise, that Alexander actually lost to Porus, was the name of the king. And the reason they lost was they were not prepared to fight somebody who was coming on elephants. And this was a totally different terrain for them. So Alexander, it is rumored, tried to escape. There's the Indus River. They wanted to sail down and then go from the ocean route. But every step of the way, they were attacked. So by the time they made it out, almost half his army had vanished. So he went back a very, very tired and bitter man. But that's India's version. Please go ahead. But my one observation before we continue, Elmer, is viewers, we are hearing some things for the very first time about China's control over Myanmar and now over Taliban. Although these things were, the smells was coming, except that people weren't figuring it out. Today, we are going to get a chance to ask Elmer how he can prove that, whether it is Taliban or Myanmar, that it is China which is actually in control. We are going to ask some tough questions, but Elmer, please continue.
Yeah, but sometimes we have to connect the dots.
Absolutely.
We have to learn from America. We don't look for always say a smoking gun. Mm-hmm. Very seldom we get a smoking gun, especially dealing with countries like China or the Taliban, because they are tyrannical regimes. They are very good in covering their tracks. So we have to connect the dots. When the Taliban leader was sitting in Beijing being photographed, this is not by accident, right? And the setting is exactly the same setting. The picture was with the Deputy Secretary of State from the United States. Then you understand this is a game between U.S. and China, and Afghanistan or Myanmar or Hong Kong. That's only part of the grand strategy. It's war. All three places, all right, is part of a U.S. and China war. There's a war going on, all right? Whatever you call it, Cold War, whatever, it doesn't matter. But there is a war going on. And in South China Sea, in Taiwan, in India, the war is almost the barbarian is at the gate already. All right.
Absolutely.
I don't know who is, the America could be the barbarian too, because they're they're encircling China. All right. But anyway, going back to Afghanistan, they want to show America that they are the winner. They are the future. And they understand, Chinese understand the weakness of the present regime, Biden regime is very weak. Not only Biden is weak, lots of so-called leaders. The Democratic leadership is very, very weak. Not like Trump, right? Trump
and yet one wonders how they managed to win the 2020 elections. Please continue.
Okay, I think truth will come out within
Yes.
before the next election, next presidential election. I'm sure because I mean in the U.S. fortunately you cannot hide too much. You know there are a lot of people talk and there's still openness within the media. But anyway, Afghanistan first is to teach the American a lesson. If you cannot even fight the Taliban, how the hell are you going to fight the Chinese communists? It's so Taliban compared to Chinese. I mean, Chinese have former soldiers, right, with military and with atomic weapons. So this is again telling. Secondly, of course, we all know that Afghanistan is a hub between the East and the West. So by capturing Afghanistan, they are able to extend the Belt and Road Initiative. That's very, very important. And thirdly, Afghanistan is standing between Iran and China. And they want to build a pipeline through Afghanistan to China, all right, so that they don't have to go through the Hormuz or the Malacca Strait. Those are they are Chinese don't have any capability in the war on the sea. So, but they believe that if they pay the Taliban, they will protect the pipeline, and then the Iran will be happy to supply gas and oil through those pipelines all the way to China. It will solve Chinese energy problem, right? Because they made a deal, I think, not too long ago, a couple of months
Yes.
ago, with
Yes.
Iran,
Yes.
25 years of supply and super cheap oil and gas by promising them they can have any weapon they choose from China. But you have to give us the best price. So the price they got from Iran is about one third of what they paid to the Russian. That's how bad it is.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's the thing. Of course, Russia are very good. The Russia, they charge ridiculous price. They charge still over $100 per barrel. It's been going on for the last how many years? Maybe 7 or 8 years. All right, pudding is tough, right? So you get the best price. But the Chinese say, "Well, we will buy peace in the north." They need Russia. They know Russia is only a verbal ally, but they at least while they are shipping oil and gas to China, they were not going to make war on China. So anyway, Afghanistan, a lot of reason, political reason, the economic reason, and energy security reasons, and so on and so forth. But of course, it's not easy. All right, these guys have their own mindset, a religion, a tough religious mindset. So somehow they'll work it out. I used to go to Afghanistan because after George Bush Jr. invaded Afghanistan, they don't want to. America are not interested in their minerals. All right, they have very good minerals. Any mountainous terrain have good minerals because they push the land up, and you can see the mineral from the sideways, and you can extract it also from sideways. So it's easier sometimes, better than a low
Going
grade.
underneath the earth.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
Right.
going
Right.
underneath is much harder. It's going sideways much easier. So Afghanistan have very, very good copper. They have a huge copper mine and iron mine, really some of the best in the world. And I was negotiating with them, try to acquire them for China, for these Chinese state companies. And of course, they have very, very good jewelries. I think the audience from India understand jewelry much more than American or even Chinese. So I think Afghan have the what is this precious jewelry? It's called the cat's eye, something like that with a cross. There's a jewelry. You see, there's a cross, there's there's a star. I forgot how it's called, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So they have lots of good precious stone and precious metal. It's to be exploited, and the Chinese already have sent in their people for the iron mine and also for the copper mine, and they have guards. Chinese, which the guards are People's Republic, PR, People's Liberation Army. Sorry, so it's guards and army is the same thing. They do the same thing in Sudan. in Africa, they always send lots of military, and at the same time, lots of infiltration. So the Chinese have dominated the outside Kabul, all the cities and all the cities and towns in Afghanistan. So then for them, it's really not so difficult. It's a for the communists, it's a smooth transition. So they will control it, and then the at the end of the day, I think the Taliban will get a lot of arms, weapons from China, and in return they will pay with their minerals, underground resources, and the hub will be good for China, and that's the way it is. And I just had a program. I just did a direct broadcast to Hong Kong about the situation in Washington. I think people are interested because that's where I live now, and
Yeah, yeah.
I deal with a lot of politicians, and also I deal with lots of people who really understand, who are close to the White House, to the Congress, and to the State Department, and also to the military. It's right now in Washington. It's a blame game. All right, everybody blame each other for losing Afghanistan. Everybody blame. All right, and then the story, the blaming changes from time to time.
Right, right,
Back and
right,
forth. And as
right.
you can see, from Biden, his blame has been changing. His version of blame has been changing from time to time. But overall, you have a very weak leader. If this is under Trump, it would never happen because Trump has condition. He's not going to withdraw just like that. What happened is Biden withdraw unconditionally and even left a lot of American and pro-American Afghans behind. I would say in the order of over 50,000 people
Yes,
they left
yes,
behind. And the
yes,
military left, they dumped the hardwares. And the most valuable are the helicopters, the Black Hawks. The, Afghanistan has the most number of Black Hawk helicopters in any country because it's so hilly. So only helicopter would work. There's no place for runway. So the whole Afghanistan operation depends on helicopters, and they left all this behind. China would love to have that because the Chinese AVIC, Chinese aviation, company, which is military anyway, military and commercial combined. They've been asking me to buy parts from the United States, and I said it's impossible. U.S. have given them a free Black Horse maybe 20 some years ago. They ran out of parts. All right. And in order to go to the plateau, the Himalaya plateau, the air is so thin. The Chinese copter don't work. Only the Black Hawk really works. The engine is strong enough to really propel the helicopter to this kind of height. We're talking about 4,000, 5,000, even 8,000 meters above sea level. So it's a huge loss. It's a joke. The whole evacuation is a joke. The military left first and left the hardware and people behind. It's a joke, but it's a joke of huge consequence because the Chinese the Chinese have seen the weakness. What is really the decision making process in Washington? When something like that happened, what would be their reaction? This is very important in war. In war, they wouldn't dare to, nobody dares to touch Trump because he would hit you first. You move, you change they have a good word. You change your breath, he will hit you first. That's the way he is. You may not like him, but it works. All right. Against the bad guys, the minute you make a little move, he hit you first. That's why they all behave very nicely. Everybody behaves like a tough teacher, right? Like nobody moves, right? But then it's necessary. So during Trump, there was no war, there was no fighting at all. He was very successful against terrorism, against communism. Very successful. There's no question about. And this guy is the opposite. This guy, Joe Biden, is really the opposite. And this time, it has shown not only to America, to the world. And it's a very serious problem. I just had a phone call from Taiwan. and they are very concerned. Let me tell you, I mean, everybody said Taiwan has democracy, and then they are not like Afghanistan, they have education. I said, this is bullshit, all right? This is bullshit. When it comes to that, when it comes to security, whoever has more education will run first. Right? Nobody's going to stay behind. Nobody's going to stay behind being taken over by communists or by terrorists. That's simple. So the guy in Taiwan said, what if a couple of leaders, not all, couple of leaders in Taiwan are under pressure from China, if they flee Taiwan and come to the United States, what will happen? Then the whole morale will collapse. The military, that's no different from the Afghans. Afghans are good fighters too, right? And they lots of people hate the Taliban. But when the leader of the country free, all right, Fred, that's what happened.
Elmer,
That's what happened. Go,
sorry to I'm
I've
sorry
gone too
to
far.
I was trying to come in a little bit earlier, but
Please.
I have too many questions. That's why I wanted
Sure,
to.
sure.
So
No,
I'll
no,
just
no.
ask you a
No,
couple of
I
quick
normally cannot
questions.
stop. I'm trying to have a one breath.
Because the wealth of information that's coming is
Mhm.
incredible. But the viewers, I'm sure, will also have these questions. So
Mhm.
the so when that meeting went the way it did, and America saw that their spokesperson was taken out, their rep was taken out, Taliban was put in the same place, same picture. The
Mhm.
writing was on the wall for America
Yes,
that
yes.
look, you are being pushed out rather harshly.
Mhm.
But what I am still having difficulty or trouble comprehending is why did a 300,000 strong US trained army allow Taliban to run over them? Did they bribe the rank and file also?
Mhm. First of all, it's not 300,000. It's 200,000.
Okay,
There's a
fine. It's
hundred
still
thousand.
more
No, no,
than.
no. There's a
Mm.
100,000 people getting paid, but somebody else took their pay. No, no, it's true. This is exactly this is a fact. All right. There's only about 200 something military, very corrupted. And Afghanistan, they are tribals. They are tribals. Their loyalty is not to the country, but to their own tribes. I mean, you know that very well, right? In India, sometimes it's like that too. All right. So their loyalty is to the tribes. They are not used to be loyal to a country. So they are very corrupted and they are only loyal to their own tribes. So the military is, even though very well trained, best equipped, no question. All right, and but there is no coherence, and they were looking up to the American as leaders and telling them what to do, directing them with air support. Suddenly the boss is gone. Now it's a disaster. The bosses left first. This is the big problem. We're asking the same question about Taiwan. What if a few political leaders leave for the United States? Whole morale collapse. The news that's gone out, the morale collapse. The whole country's morale collapse. That's what happened. All right, this president, Afghan president, left in a helicopter, and news spread so fast. Within hours, the whole morale collapse. Nobody will fight if the boss has already fled.
Absolutely true. He has the most to lose or gain, so that makes sense.
Mhm.
Now, when you started describing, that's when, for me at least, the penny dropped that Iran is into a 20-year deal with China to supply oil at a very very low price, and therefore China would do the next obvious thing, logical thing, which is to find an alternate way to get that crude into its territory.
Mhm.
However, there is, you can look at a map and say, okay,
Mhm.
these are contiguous countries. I can,
Right.
draw the pipeline through that. Now, you just said that Afghans think for their tribes. They are not still thinking about it as a unity.
Yeah.
However, Taliban is able to influence that because Taliban has members from all these tribes. How did
Mhm.
they manage it?
Or how do they manage it? I think they basically say this is yours. They have maybe many tribal interests, so it's like a spoil, like a Alibaba. They steal and then they split the spoil. They don't care about the national unity. To them, it doesn't matter because they can really control each family and all the women. To them, it's a big win. All the 12-year-old girls, suddenly became their wives. They can pick and choose. They're talking about personal gain. I mean, whether what happened to Afghanistan doesn't matter to the Taliban. It's very much like Iran today. All right, Iran is suffering, really suffering. People hates the mullahs, but then the mullahs, we have our interests, and people. There is no such thing as people. So I would say, and also, of course, we all know the Taliban's and the Iranian are different religious order, one is Sunni or one is Shiite. But China can say, Iran, you supply the oil, we'll pay you for the oil, and then we pay the Taliban for the transport of the pipeline. So they can really manage this kind of thing. In fact, about 10 years ago, yeah, not 15 years ago in China, they are already talking about United States of Arabs. All right,
Hmm.
they have ways. They have ways to have all kinds of revolutions, all right, even revolutions, to really overthrow these sheikhs and shahs and all these people, and then start get their own people, get the Arab people to overthrow their leadership and form a new power base. This is part of their plan. Eventually, that may happen.
Elmer, Xi Jinping should be having an incredible set of advisors, very, very brainy people who are advising him. Because if you look at the way the whole thing has happened in so many different frontiers, in so many different ways, and yet, a country like US is still being tentative. So he's kept US guessing. Is it true? I mean, are
Yeah.
his advisors super smart?
I'm telling you, I live in Washington. It's a disaster here. It's a disaster here. I don't understand. American strong is because of their economics, their system, their so-called democracy. But so far, democracy is not really working here. So in a way, it's not the America we came to. I mean, I came to this country for college education, and you came also a long
Yes,
time ago. It's
yes,
not
yes.
what we thought it is. I'm more and more seeing the trouble here. But fortunately, the people, the American people, have certain idea. At the end of the day, people counts. All right. If the people don't want to be strong, you cannot make them strong. If people decided they want to be right and strong and so on, people finally decide. Luckily, this system may still work, even though the left have controlled the major media, the social media, and so on and so forth. Hopefully, the people will stand up and elect the right leader.
Now, so let's take up the conversation back to China's, looking at Taiwan, or how they have quietly, in your opinion, captured Myanmar. Perhaps you can help us understand. It's one of those things. Myanmar is a neighbor of India, but not many Indians know about what exactly is going on in Myanmar. Aung Suu Kyi came up, everybody woke up and said, "Oh, this is great." But then again, she was not allowed to occupy power. She was like a, with power without responsibility kind of thing. Then she came back and she got overthrown. Why do you say that China now controls Myanmar?
You see, Myanmar, all these years, in the past, whatever, 50 or 70 years, it's always been controlled by China, including Laos, Myanmar, and several of these countries. They depend on China. And it's easy, very easy to bribe their politicians and leaders. So Myanmar has always been on China's side. But then Aung San Suu Kyi came along, all right? And the world needs somebody to have a democratic front. So she was just the front, and I gave her some. Very much like Hong Kong. We one country, two system in the last 23 years, but that's only a show. Right? That's a show. China is always have a show, and I think in my program I've told the audience many times. In China, it's the Communist Party runs the whole thing. Everything else is a facade. It's fake. The prime minister does not run make the does not really it's not really runs the country or the ministries. It's the Xi Jinping, the party secretary. So Myanmar, the military behind the military is the Chinese communists. So what happened in the last or a few months ago, the Chinese is getting pressure in the West Pacific and in India. They are worried about being encircled, all right, encircled by US and its allies, the Quad Power, etc. So they decided they have to turn Myanmar and have this Myanmar transport from Andaman Sea, right? Is it Andaman Sea? They can transport all their oil and gas up to China. All right. This was very important. Myanmar is the route, the alternative route, without going through Malacca.
Right,
From
right,
Malacca. So they
right.
want to open it up. So they basically, Wang Yi, exactly there, Wang Yi was there about 10 days before they arrested, house arrest Aung San Suu Kyi. And then the military took over. Wang Yi went and gave the order. That's Wang Yi's business. He always gave orders. He went to Myanmar, gave the Junkers, right? Give them the order, and then they arrested and do away with democracy. And then, of course, the people were very angry. But so what? They are not armed like Hong Kong people. We're very angry. So what? All right. So China, they get used to it. This kind of protest, even riots, they get used to it. So China needs that way all the way down to the Andaman Sea. All right. So
Right,
this is
right.
that's why they took over Myanmar. It's simple as that.
Yeah.
They cannot wait. They cannot allow Aung San Suu Kyi to say no and then create an international scene. But in the meantime,
Yes.
after they've taken over, what did Biden do? Nothing. Nothing. Not even lip service. So, so it's no different from Afghanistan. Yes, go ahead.
Viewers, what Elmer is referring to as Andaman Sea is essentially Bay of Bengal, because what
Mm,
he's saying is that China has an alternate route to get supplies or crude through Rangoon.
mm,
They also call it Yangon
yeah.
now, but it's
Yangon,
near the port.
Rangoon.
Right. So
Mm,
that bypasses the Malacca Strait, but it still has to
mm,
go through Hormuz.
yes.
So with Iran, even that is bypassed. I have one question, Elmer. By the time China finishes bribing the pipeline route of all the various tribal lords, do you think they'll still have a margin that it is still cheaper than getting it on a ship, on a barge?
It- no, it's safer because they don't have to come up against United States Navy. All right. The U.S. India is of course still weak. Your navy is still weak, but American Navy is really patrolling the Indo-Pacific day and
Yes.
night. All right,
Yes.
and they can bypass that. They know they cannot fight. Chinese, they have never won a naval war in history. All right, they lost to Japan and many. So they know the safest way is the land mass, the European Asian landmass. They want to control the landmass, like Alexander the Great. Same thing. With landmass, they can do a lot. Not only they can do a lot, along the landmass, if they have a railway or whatever it is, it's business because there's lots of natural resource they can supply to China. It's like the British Commonwealth, right? And then China will manufacture it into finished product and sell back to the people. This is what the Chinese have in mind, the Commonwealth, like the British Commonwealth. All the raw material goes to you in the old days to Britain, right? And Britain manufacture them and sell them back to you at the value added. So that's what they have in mind. They are learning and they want to control this landmass. Ocean is just a matter of blocking their rivals, but the real objective is the landmass.
You just planted a thought in my mind, and I'm going to play it by you. So let's see how you react to this.
Mm,
See, assume that the pipeline starts in Iran and winds its way through Afghanistan, and then turns
yes,
north, goes through
yes,
Pakistan, and it has to go through what is called as Gilgit-Baltistan, which
yes,
is essentially Pak-occupied portion of Kashmir, or
yes,
today India calls it as part of what is called as
yes,
Ladakh. India did some
yeah,
restructuring Ladakh.
mhm,
So essentially, it is going through Indian territory.
Yes.
Now there is, for the longest time, India was trying to have the Western nations to recognize that Pakistan is sitting in Indian territory, and they have not really been able to do that, mainly because India was not a permanent member of UN Security Council. They got a
Mm.
chance in the 50s, but Nehru stupidly said that China, it is China's to take, because US threw out China from the Security Council when Chiang Kai-shek abandoned and went to Taiwan. Long
Yes.
story short, at that time that seat was vacant, and US said, you apply, we will make you the UNSC permanent member. But Nehru was one of those dreamers who, instead of grabbing the opportunity, he said, no, 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 that is for China. And China richly rewarded this guy by invading India in 1962. All water under the bridge, but I think Indian government never seems to learn. From what I'm hearing today, this is the conflict between India and China. What I'm hearing is, in April 2020, China came in a few kilometers.
Mm.
Okay, then the fighting, India realized it only 6 weeks later or 5 weeks later, and that time it is said that they made sure that bad information, bad intel was given, but India very corrupt, so they could have easily suppressed things. We don't know what happened, but
Mm.
by the time India woke up and decided to fight back, they are already in. What
Mm.
what they did was, they started, India found a place like called Kailash Heights, where they could kind of control or watch what China was doing. And there was a skirmish in June 2020 where 1:3 ratio,
Mm.
hand to hand combat, India killed Chinese soldiers. It's a big, big hit.
Yes.
India lost 20, China
Mm.
lost between 60 to 130. They are
Yes.
not saying this. And
With
India
it not.
is, you just went mute. He's going to log back in. I think there was a timely, must have been a power saving mode or something like that. He's coming back in. Hang on, we are in the middle of a very interesting conversation, and what I was going to say was about how India has allowed China to take India's own area and now made that the buffer state. So this is basically another way of acquiring land in one slice at a time, called salami tactics, that the Russians started, and now Chinese continue to use it. As we wait for Elmer to come back.
Sorry, it's some phone trying to call in. I switched off already. But
Okay,
uh,
great, great.
have you
Go ahead.
finished, or you want me to answer? In fact, Siri, I mean, if you look at the map, there is a 100-kilometer border between Afghanistan and China. Very narrow border.
Yes, yeah.
So they can actually put a pipe through without coming to this your controversial area. Without coming to your controversial area, they can enter both Pakistan and Afghanistan have a very small border with China. That in fact there's product going through to Pakistan using those narrow borders. So this is what they have in mind. But of course, this whole area. I think the reason I think India can really stand up very strongly today, partly, I'm not saying completely, partly is because of US behind your back, supporting you. But I'm a little bit worried how much Biden, how weak they are. It's not really reliable. And Chinese know they are not reliable. So Chinese is going to threaten using nuclear weapon. Their latest decision is to develop all sorts of nuclear weapons, miniaturized, better targeted from the space, etc., etc. So when China threatens nuclear conflict, U.S. will back off because you live in the states. They will not go to a war. They will not go to a nuclear conflict. For India, for Taiwan, for Japan, for Korea. That's the problem with this country here. We have to understand, and you cannot blame them. So this is why you guys are lucky you have your own nuclear weapon, at least you to counter that. But Taiwan, Japan, Korea, they have nothing. They have nothing. And the American alliance or joint defense is not reliable. Suddenly this Biden can disappear for a few days and the game is over. So what the Chinese are hoping, I'm telling you what the Chinese are hoping, because I know what they tell me what they're hoping. They want to push American back to the dateline, international dateline. So they control this side of the Pacific, and America, you can have that. So what happened? The entire Asia is basically uh, controlled under the Chinese Communist Party. That's how bad this whole thing is. That's why I'm here. I dropped all my business because if we have to go come and support people like Trump and Pompeo, otherwise we are all in trouble because they are the only one who are able to stand up and have to fight to disband the Chinese Communist Party. What Biden is doing now with the help of George Soros, all right, is just to change Xi Jinping. They want to switch Xi Jinping and then be somebody, gets to somebody else. They don't have the determination, the will to disband the CCP. And today you have Xi Jinping. Few years later, you may have a Li Jinping or Chen Jinping. Who the hell knows? So I'm not kidding. They go left. The problem with this Communist Party is the more good they go left, the more support they have from the people. All right. We have about, I don't even know what the real number of the population of China. There are all kinds of bullshit going on, lies. All right. Let's say let's say 1.2 trillion people in China. All right. India, your number is real
1.2
because
billion, 1.2
billion.
billion.
Sorry, 1.2 billion. Sorry. And your number is probably accurate because you have no reason to lie. They have every reason to lie to be the number one country in the world in terms of population. So they have a lot of benefit in UN and so on. But anyway, 1.2 trillion, 1.2 billion people. 1 billion of them are very dirt poor. Talking about less than 200 US dollars a month of income. Then you understand what I'm talking about. Those people are dirt poor. You never see them. You never see them in the media. I go to China, I never meet them. They are really the slaves of China, working as low-cost slaves and so on. All the product you see in the States, in Target or the Walmart and so on, Costco, all made in China by these cheap laborers. Right? That's why they're so competitive. Nobody in the world, even India, cannot compete with them. All right, and they're not bad. All right, they're not bad, and they almost get nothing because they are from the farm. They come to work in the city. They are paid very little and no welfare, nothing, no education. They don't have to support them. And by the time let's say they work from 18 years to 30 years, so their youth is used up, then they send them back to the farm. And nothing, that's it. So let's say a good 10 years of very good and cheap and hardworking labors. And then return. No retirement, no medical, no education, nothing. That's why they can compete. I have doubt that even India can compete. I know your labor is also low, your labor cost. But then this is the system, and these people support Xi Jinping. They support this left idea because they look at the rich people and say, "You guys are stealing from China, or at the rich families and so forth." I've talked before. You guys, and now Xi Jinping and come and catch all the corrupted, and then he is going to give something to us, to the poor. I mean, I'm sure in India you have the similar
Oh yeah,
politicians
yeah.
doing the
Same
same,
same
exactly the same.
spiel.
They say,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, we are." No, lately, you can see that. All right, China is Xi Jinping is killing all the Chinese stock, right, on Wall Street and in Hong Kong.
Right.
Why? Because those shareholders, of course, there are a lot of U.S. institutions or they are holding the shares, but most of the shares are held by the rich Chinese families. And by destroying that stock market and destroying those shares, the physical company entity is still in China. He lose nothing. The loss are the shareholders. All right. You see all this share almost drop by half. All right. In the last 2 3 months. All right. Since the end financial service. Since that, the share price of all these China related stock have dropped half. Doesn't matter. The American institution lose money. The Chinese super rich and the rich family lost money. But the business itself is still sitting in China. All right, he takes over. He sent in a few political communist cadets and take over those business. So for him and the people, the 1 billion people are very happy. you did a great thing. You took the money from the rich and gave it to the poor. All right, and no more tuition. They cancel it because only the rich can afford tuition, right? After school tuition. The good is that this is great. He is trying to balance between the distance between the rich and the poor. That's exactly, if you look at the paper yesterday, that's what it is. He saw the third distribution of wealth, meaning you guys are so rich that we'll take you one after another. The first is probably tax, right? And the second is donation. The third means you'll lose everything. Everything goes back to the state. So what he's doing has a lot of grassroots support, I'm afraid. So it's a we have this is newspaper never tell you this thing. I mean these Western news major media, including English, German, or even India, or they only talk about what they hear from the news agencies. It's nonsense. The real problem right now is Xi Jinping has the support of 1 billion people.
One last question before we wind up this, and we have a few people who have asked questions, and I'll run them by you. One last question is: I've also heard that Afghanistan has a lot of rare earth minerals like lithium and other things that are required for battery technology. Is that true?
True, true. They have, because once you push up, it's like the Himalaya plateau. Once you push up the land, everything underneath is exposed. And it's not one piece of land. It's also wrinkles, becomes hills and valleys, rolling hills. You should push up lots of things underneath. In fact, everywhere has a lot of minerals, underground resources. Once you push it up, like foldings, and you get everything. It's a very rich country. Even Tibet and Xinjiang, very, very rich. That's why the local people hated the communists. They came, and the local people get nothing, and they keep on digging and remove all the underground wealth from the local people. That's why they had problem in Tibet and Xinjiang. They were stealing, robbing the local wealth that
You
belonged
know,
to the future generations.
yeah. See, you put the thing in the right perspective. China will not hesitate to go nuclear, but the West will hesitate, even if it is the
Exactly.
opponent that they are going to go after. So, see, this is where the big problem lies. One side is not playing by any rules, the other side is overly conscious of playing by the rules. And because of that attitude, the other side also plants its own people to keeping those fires raging. And I still can't find out why Biden is so soft towards China, that the Hunter Biden's dealings with China, his own Biden dealings with China, these are still like completely suppressed and kept under the carpet. Also, by the way, viewers, I must tell you one thing: Elmer is not a Republican, neither am I. We are independent. He's not even a citizen of United States. He's
Mm.
he's a citizen of Hong
Hong
Kong.
Kong.
He's
I'm Hong
also a
Kong
resident
person.
of Japan. He's not
Mm.
a citizen of United States. He is here,
Mm.
so what we are seeing is what is happening around the world. He is one of the most traveled persons, and I mean, energetic. Every time I call him, he's in a
Mm.
different town, in a different city. So amazing stuff. So Elmer, if you are, with your permission, I'll start asking some questions now
Please,
from users. Yeah, so it's down
please.
here, but I'll read it for you. Indra Walson wants to know: Hello, Elmer. Many American companies have factories in China. Will China allow these companies to continue production in China while opposing the United States in the world stage?
Now, let me tell you, there are a lot of American, like a typical example, right? Tesla. Right? They build one of the
Yes,
nicest factory, producing more cars than any other factories. All right. There are many Chinese factories. And this is what's going to happen in a matter of maybe 1 or 2 weeks. The report will come out on the lab leak, whether the virus was leaked or natural. And we know everybody knows it's lab leak. So the report
yes.
will say it's lab leak, whether it's deliberately or by accident, and whether it's let spread deliberately or by accident. So that's what's going to happen. But so anyway, the American, they're different from us Asians. They're going to ask for reparations. all right, for the
Exactly.
damage.
Right.
Nobody is going to say, let's forget it. They're never going to forget it. So what next? And China, of course, will refuse examination, and they accuse the U.S. of spreading the virus instead of them. All right, well, we know the whole world knows who did it. So what's going to happen? It's going to lead to sanctions. U.S. is going to maybe to freeze all the Chinese asset in the United States. And the biggest amount, China has bought a lot of
Yes.
treasury bills.
1.3
And in
trillions.
fact, in fact there are different talkings. Some talk about two, some even talk about three, some talking about one. Let's say 2 trillion. And the Chinese corrupted officials have lots of money and property asset in U.S. And Chinese state company have a lot of some kind of investment in United States. So they're going to freeze all these Chinese company assets or public assets. And the Chinese is going to do the same. So they're going to freeze American assets, including those factories in China. This is going to happen. It's not a joke. And it's not only America. European going to freeze. UK is going to freeze. Japan is going to freeze all the Chinese assets. And the Chinese will do the same. They call counter sanction. So it's going to happen. This is why it's going to lead to war. And I don't even think Biden can stop it. All right. Because everybody's so angry. I mean, you have no idea. I travel, but travel under COVID is a disaster. I'm a very good traveler, but never had so testing, how many hours before quarantine, this regulation, that regulation. You download this app, upload that app. You have no idea. I mean, it's unbelievable. Everybody is suffering. Everybody who's watching this show must be suffering. So everybody wants reparation. And Donald Trump said for US, he wants $10 trillion. All right. And I believe the world may be about $30 trillion of loss. And they are going to ask China to pay. And the Chinese will not pay. And there will be sanction freezing, and there will be counter sanction, counter freezing. This is going to happen, and it
So,
will
so
lead to
this
war.
staring fight, in this staring fight, I'm sorry, just one simple question, and then we'll go to the next question. In this
Yes.
staring fight, China is more dependent on its products being bought by the rest of the world than the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, we're not going to sell any chips to them, right? It's very simple. The semiconductor business. We
Right.
are trying to block them everywhere. We're trying to cut them off in the internet. All right, we're going to stop their Android software operating system. We're going to stop their Windows system. We're going to stop their banking, which they are using an IBM system. All right, we're going to stop everything. All right. At the end of the day, Xi Jinping is already preparing for that. So that's why he needs at least the energy. Energy is the basic thing for survival. The rest he can do it with a lesser quality and less, but energy you cannot live without, especially in a kind of a war. So he's preparing for that.
Well, I think there are a few weapons that US has that perhaps we don't know where they might be able to still get at the pipeline, but that's okay. That's a talk for a different day, and we will have you back in 2 3 weeks time when this lab report comes out. Next question
Sure.
from Aditya: did the United States ask other allies to leave with them? What stopped the other so-called superpowers from staying in Afghanistan? Is it to save their money or what?
No, they're all leaving because the U.S. was protecting everybody there. A lot of NGOs and so on. They're all leaving. There's no way to. It's unsafe because pretty soon the Taliban will take you for hostage. So everybody's leaving, and they're very angry because Biden never informed them. That's why Johnson was the first to call, and then Angela Merkel was the second to call, and they have difficulty even getting through to him. So can you imagine leaving all the civilians and the foreigners there in Afghanistan and the military pull out? It's this is this it's going to hurt their leadership. Were there any Indian in Afghanistan?
Yes, there were. In fact, the
Oh,
entire embassy has been evacuated recently. Something very
yes.
interesting happened. Many of you may have read it on social media. When the French evacuated Elmer, they took with them 20 Gorkha regiment soldiers who were guarding the French embassy. Gorkhas is an Indian regiment.
Yes.
They took them also with them back to France.
You mean Gurgas, right?
Gorkhas, G
You
O
call
R.
Gurgas. We call them
Uh,
Gurgas. Different
okay,
pronunciation.
okay.
They are the best
Nepal.
soldiers.
Yes,
They
they
are
are the
from
best
Nepal.
soldiers.
With
Yes, yes,
their chop, right? That's the biggest
yes,
chopping
yes,
knife.
yes. Right,
We
right,
have
right.
plenty of them in Hong Kong.
Oh,
They stay
okay.
behind. After 1970, they stay behind.
Understood, understood, understood. So, they took them back with them to Paris. So
Sure.
there is India is almost completely evacuated. However,
Good.
India has another problem. Another problem from 1947, we have had Hindus and Sikhs
Mm,
staying in Afghanistan. There are about
mm.
5,000 now.
Wow.
And they are afraid for their life. To
Mm,
get them into India passed this thing called CAA, Citizenship Amendment Act, and they said that people can apply under that. People of Afghanistan descent as well as Pakistan who were happened to be Hindus and Sikhs and Christians of Indian origin, everybody could apply. Unfortunately, there was so much noise created in the West that India paused in its implementation. They are
mm.
doing it, they walked it slow. Unfortunately, now there is a desperate situation. I don't know what's going to happen to these brothers and sisters. My heart goes out to them. Let's hope and pray that Taliban spares them. Because one thing is, India is not seen as an enemy country in Afghanistan, but I don't know what Taliban thinks. How much of mess they have got in their head from listening to all the stuff that Pakistan spouts out. So anyway, so there is a problem there. Let's go to the next question. Giridhar Mamadi wants to know: will China face any different destiny than the US or Soviets in Afghanistan?
I think China understand the danger that Afghans are very tough people to deal with. They will never submit to the Chinese, so they have to handle it differently. And also the problem, as you know, the Uyghurs are Muslims, so the Uyghurs and the Taliban are very sympathetic to the Uyghurs, and they were helping the Uyghurs to escape. So there is a conflict to have to overcome. It's a big problem for China because China wants to control Uyghurs. Basically, they wiped out the Uyghurs, like the similar to what Hitler did to the Jews. This
Jews,
is
right?
exactly, almost exactly. So, I think somehow China will let the Uyghurs leave Xinjiang, and then the Uyghurs will probably lose their home. That's unfortunate, but that's life. Under communists, like we Hong Kong people, we are losing our home. You just cannot live under communism.
So
It's slavery.
is there a huge resettlement of native land Chinese, mainland Chinese coming into Hong Kong now? Is it happening?
No, no, not that many because of the
Okay.
COVID. First of all, because of COVID, it's
Okay.
not easy to come in.
Okay.
So I believe that they are underreporting the number. All right, they're
Hmm.
underreporting because they want to show that they are doing okay. Not that many people are leaving. In fact, I would say at the end of the day, we have 7.4 million people in Hong Kong. I believe at the end of the day will be over two. But then you see, people are hesitant to leave their home. Everybody, who wants to
Of
leave home?
course. Of
Nobody
course.
wants to leave home. So, and especially Hong Kong everybody's been doing well, making good money. And suddenly you want them to go to UK as refugees. Nobody wants to do that. Even come to US, it's very tough life. They have they have maids. Hong Kong has 300,000 Filipino maids, and then from Indonesia, altogether 400,000. So the women have having a good time. They never have to work. So so all of a sudden this is all changing. But I think the people have to leave. If they don't leave, they you were talking about why I should tell everybody why China is not afraid of nuclear weapon, using the nuclear weapon, because they don't consider people as life. They consider them just numbers. So right, because in USA people have votes In China, people have no votes. Meaning, once in China they're slaves, in the United States they're masters. So you would, of course, you wouldn't wouldn't let the master die of nuclear attack. But the China, what do they care? Let's say 10 million people, less than half a year, they have that kind of birth, so they can replace with the new birth. So this is the way the communists think. People are just numbers. It's like you go to war, they have to be sacrificed.
Next question from Sri Vardhan. China's partnership with Taliban can turn majority of the Asia into a hostile regime filled with dictatorship and terrorism. Will this pose a direct threat to India, Israel, and Europe?
All the Asian countries, all the Asian countries, if they have their choice, is already very, very scared of China. Only those politicians of those countries, because they're taking bribe, and then they control the media. But those countries that the people have a say, like Vietnam, the Philippines, the Indonesia, they're already all on US side. All the Asian countries are basically on US side. Only Myanmar, Laos, they have been always been controlled with money and military through China by China. So they are not. So everybody is already seeking shelter under U.S. umbrella, but unfortunately, the U.S. umbrella are full of holes.
Absolutely. It leaks like a sieve. So I think with that, our questions have come to an end. And Elmer, this was a fascinating conversation. Lots of things that our viewers got to know from you that they probably, like you said, everybody has the dots placed in front of them. Who is doing a good job of connecting these dots? That's the difference. And you were the difference today. And I mean, I'm just enjoying the whole conversation. I'm going to play it back in my mind, what we have talked about today. And we are going to be back soon again as this thing is going to play out, because once that lab report comes, you're going to have a stock market correction for sure. I mean, even one company shut down, it's going to start shaking a lot of things up. So we are going to wait and see how this plays out. And thanks for tuning in. Viewers, 6 in 10 of you are not subscribers. I urge you to subscribe to our channel, because the more subscriptions we have, the more virality our videos will have. And don't you want your friend, your mother, your father, your sister to watch and learn about what is happening? What is the Chinese plan in Taliban? This is the first time we came to know that China is the big boss in Afghanistan today. Nobody knew this. So these kinds of things, revelations are coming out. So far, whatever Elmer has told us in his various conversations, they've all turned out to be true. You have to wait. Things don't just like that come. And some of us have information a priori ahead of everybody else. And you know, we can only make some educated guesses. Sometimes it might go wrong. But for the most part, things have been on the dot. Thanks, Elmer. And thanks once again for taking the time out. I know you got a phone call in the middle that messes up for a small minute or so, but we are back on track. Thank you once again for joining, and namaskar.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.